Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 334 of Humanity Rising. We want to pause today and just give thanks for life as we begin our program. We're in the midst of so many things here at Humanity Rising, and all of you have been traversing such an extraordinary amount of activity and challenges over the last 18 months as we have traversed this pandemic that has fundamentally changed our world and fundamentally challenged who we think we are as humans in relationship to nature. That I thought today it would be good to just pause and give thanks for this extraordinary opportunity to be alive at this momentous time in history, where everything is at stake, and how we act as citizens of our communities and the world is really being activated in ways that in some cases are unprecedented in the history of humankind, because we now stand on the very brink of self-destruction, as we all know. So let us begin by just pausing and reflecting for a moment. Let us center ourselves in our bodies. Let's take a breath, close our eyes, and let us attune ourselves to our hearts and a spirit of gratitude and deep thanksgiving that we're alive. We're just simply alive, aware, concerned, compassionate at this moment. Thank you, everyone. Now, with an open heart and a heart full of deep gratitude and love for each and every one of you, I want to open our program and to say that for the first time in a while now, we haven't been able to locate the people that were going to be doing our program on kidney health. We had a woman, Kiara Jean Roberts, who since the age of 4 has been struggling with kidney challenges, has undergone dialysis and 2 kidney transplants, and through that journey has developed a holistic health perspective that is quite empowering. But we sent all the links, and somehow she and the doctor that were going to appear today have not appeared. So I thought I would take advantage of this crisis as an opportunity to speak to everyone about what we're unfolding now through Humanity Rising and the Global Regeneration Corps, and what's coming up with the Conference of Parties November 1 through 12, but in a more measured way. Normally I take a few minutes in each day and kind of rush through things and hope people will tune in and check out the Global Regeneration Corps website. But today, I thought it would be good to just relax into a presentation spontaneously as we seize the moment in the spirit of Carpe Diem, to reflect on what Aristotle said was at the heart of the polis, of the community. And that is a citizenship based on friendship and respect, because that's at the heart of what we've been building through Humanity Rising. As you all know, we started on May 22nd, and for 334 sessions now, we have invited nearly 1,500 speakers from literally all over the world. As those of you who've been following us know, we're in 130 countries. We've had over 400 organizations join as partners. We have developed coalitions around various issues of note to many of you, including a whole new master's program, a whole new MBA called the Masters in Regenerative Action, that is not about Ubiquity University providing a program that they want people to attend, but it's been developed by literally 40 or 50 coalition partners. It's housed at Ubiquity because we wanted to have it as an accredited degree, but it's comprised of individuals and groups around the world that care very deeply about regeneration, care very deeply about business, and know that the future of business needs to be in regenerating the global ecosystem so that we can ensure that the human race survives intact as we go through the eye of the needle called Code Red. We've done this because of an Aristotelian sense of what it means to be a citizen. And that was what the early Greeks in the 4th century BC really made as their major contribution, I think, to global world civilization. This notion that the polis isn't about a king sitting at the top or an elite, a corporate elite, and everybody is at the bottom as workers and basically as at minimum wage, as it were, doing the king's bidding, but that the polis needed to be comprised of all the citizens coming together in a thoughtful way, in an assembly. And it was probably the few, if not only, direct democracies in the history of the world. There are no direct democracies existing in the world today. We have representative democracies, where a group of people elect a person that goes to a Congress, a parliament of some kind, make laws that are refracted back. And that's one reason why the democracies have been so awkward and corrupted, that they're not direct democracies. The Greek had a direct democracy. It was limited, absolutely, only to men who own property. But it was an impulse of egalitarianism in the governance of the city of Athens, which was actually very small. Athens was a little city, as you know, in Greece, and there was about 240, 250,000 people. 40,000 of them were men, and they were all empowered. Women, of course, were excluded. Slaves were excluded. And there were far more women and slaves than there were men. But nevertheless, it was an impulse for the first time that we know about in a significant way in history to redefine what it means to govern and what it means to abide by the norms of law. And that's another very important aspect of democracy. In the ancient world, mostly in the tribal world, the indigenous world, it was all around blood feuds. It was around if someone did something to my tribe, you did something back to theirs, and that was the law of the tooth and the claw. And at a certain point, people matured and said, well, wait, if we do that, all of us are going to be tormented forever. Why don't we develop the rule of law? And each one of us as individuals will forego the right for retribution. And we let a court of law adjudicate penalties. And that was a major advance in human evolution, moving from blood feuds to the rule of law. And another major advance was the movement of tyranny to democracy and the impulse of collective discernment of truth, policy, and future. And that impulse has grown in Western civilization till now in the 21st century. Even though we no longer have direct democracies, we have representative democracies that allow most people, most of the time, to vote. But even today, in the 21st century, there are always challenges to the notion that everyone, everywhere, has the right to participate in governance. We're seeing it here in the United States, for example, which declared the Declaration of Independence back in 1776. A major party, the Republican Party, is doing everything it can to suppress the vote of people of color and young people. So the fight for democracy is never ending. It requires eternal vigilance, as Thomas Jefferson said, generation after a generation. And the reason why I raise this is because this is the impulse that gave rise to Humanity Rising. We were all sitting here mostly with our heads down in lockdown. If you recall, in the spring of 2020, this was the first time in human history. It's worth recalling. It's the first time in human history where governments en masse around the world put the human race in isolation. Never happened before. Never happened before. And engage in social distancing, wearing masks in public, all at the same time. And as we've all experienced, as we've traversed this, this was hard to take. And it was coming from the top down in a very authoritarian way. So the impulse for Humanity Rising was to start from the bottom up in the spirit of Aristotle and the polis and friendship, and to say, let's let the people of the world come together on Zoom. We have a technology that allows almost anybody anywhere with the internet to speak to anybody anywhere who also has the internet. Let's talk about the human future. Let's talk about what it means to come into alignment with nature. Let's talk about our concerns, our aspirations for future development in a spirit of mutual respect, in a spirit of friendship and egalitarianism. And you see what God hath wrought, as it were, as we've allowed this impulse, this basic egalitarian, friendly, democratic impulse to just flow through us. And we've seen everything that's grown out of Humanity Rising. And then, as you know, this past June, there was the article in Arctic News that is beginning now. Scientists are predicting an extinction event by 2026 because the climate is now spinning out of control. And we're in a climate tipping point where we're rapidly approaching 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels. We've blown way past 350 parts per million, which was the upper limit of safety. We're now at 420 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. And of the 35, 36 crucial tipping point areas in the ecology, we have gone past the tipping point in a majority of them now, including the oceans, with the rise of temperatures in the ocean and the hygiene of the ocean is now beyond the tipping point. Greenland, Arctic Ocean are now beyond the tipping point and engaging in irreversible melt of the North Pole and the ice cap off of Greenland, which inevitably now will cause very dramatic rise in our ocean. So we're in the middle of one tipping point after another. And our governments continue to sleep. Every single one of them. There's not a government on planet Earth, as I speak to you today on the 8th of October, 2021, that is taking the crisis in which we find ourselves seriously. And that's why, in the spirit of the polis, the spirit of the ancient Greeks, the spirit of democracy everywhere in the world, it's incumbent upon all of us as the people of the world to now come together in a strategic formation that we are calling the Global Regeneration Corps. And we're launching this and have been preparing over the last 2 months because once we took in the Arctic News prediction and realized we didn't have 10 years to kind of turn this around, we've got maybe 3 to 5 years, and we've got to do it within now an unavoidable escalation of ecological turbulence. We've got to take in the latest report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, released in August, saying that we are now in unprecedented territory. And that is when, in August, just a month and a half ago, that the Secretary General said we're now in code red for humanity because we are on a catastrophic pathway. A catastrophic pathway. Those were his exact words. So spontaneously again, out of the hundreds of organizations that have come together to comprise Humanity Rising and the thousands of people that have been coming through our sessions over these months, came the Global Regeneration Corps. And it was really, and I want to acknowledge him, Ed Muller, who's the president of the University of International Cooperation, who said beginning last spring, if we're heading into extinction, if we're going off the cliff, there's only one thing we can do. There's only one option left for humanity. There's only one campaign left, and that's regeneration. Because you can no longer be sustainable to a broken ecology. You can only now proactively regenerate in alignment with natural systems. So that has been the impulse that Humanity Rising has carried. That's what gave rise to the Masters in Regenerative Action, our BA program in Regenerative Action, and now the Global Regeneration Corps. So I want to just spend some time just describing the invitation to all of you watching this program today. In the spirit of the polis, in the spirit of citizenship, egalitarianism, and friendship, what can we now do together that could conceivably make a difference in a world that's not at the precipice, in a world that's now going over the precipice? What can we conceivably do? Well, we know we have to regenerate. We know we have to get out there and proactively quicken the human spirit. And that's what Humanity Rising is doing each and every day. We're trying to quicken the human spirit, activate all of us to a greater commitment to do the good at this critical hour. All of us. Many times I've said, and speakers have said, we're in a moment in history where every choice matters. Both the choice not to do something and the choice to do something. Every choice we make about what we eat, what we do, how we work, who we associate with, how we spend our time now matters. And collectively will determine whether humanity uses this unprecedented crisis as an opportunity for the kind of human regenerative renewal that can guide us at this critical time. So in the first instance, what the Global Regeneration Corps is trying to build a global network of regeneration, pods, groups of people of all ages, supporting our young people in particular, because it's our young people that are now going through escalating, increasingly lethal ecological turbulence, in the face of which our governments are no longer capable of ensuring stability. Our kids, I've got 2 kids, are going into it. So above all, we have to empower our young people to be able to navigate and ideally thrive in code red. So we want to create pods of what we're calling regeneration first responders to regenerate anything and everything that they can lay their hands on, from human interactions and human communities and human domains to ecological domains. So if any of you out there want to come in and help develop a pod to work on something that you feel passionate about, please go to our website at globalregenerationcorps.com, and you can sign up as an individual or as an organization to either create a pod or join a pod. And then all of you that represent organizations, you can also sign up and do 2 things. There's two things we want the organizations to do. Most of the organizations, in fact, all the organizations that are involved in Humanity Rising are doing some kind of good in the world. They've taken some challenge, whether it's child slavery or the White Lions in South Africa or Regenerate Costa Rica or the Lions Club in Sri Lanka that are working on local environmental issues. Are there issues that need regeneration that you know about and care about? Go on the website and let us know what they are, because what we want to build over the next several months is basically a menu of all the kinds of opportunities for regeneration that we collectively know about. So as pods are formed, the pods can form wanting to do their own thing in a local area, say outside of Athens, Greece, or Cincinnati, Ohio. But they could also come onto the GRC website and look at all the opportunities for regeneration and pick one. And then they work with your organization, who mentors them and provides counsel and strategic framing for them, so that they don't have to kind of start from square one, but they have the advantage of working with a mature organization that knows where the areas of regeneration need to be and can work with the pod to focalize the pod for effective. That works for the organization because they get more hands on deck. And that works for the pods because they get wise counsel and a partnership. Back to Aristotle, the polis is built by citizens working together in the spirit of friendship. That's what the Global Accreditation Corps is. And so organizations come in and join us for that purpose. And then secondly, many of you have content, training programs. And whoever out there that you have training programs, again, it can be on anything from ecology to, we just have a course coming on board in dealing with trauma, mental health. The world has been traumatized by COVID. Every indicator in virtually every country around mental health is being exacerbated. Suicides, addictions, drug related issues, domestic violence, crime rates are all going up because we're in a pandemic. We're all under stress. We're in lockdown. We're in social distancing. We don't know how to cope because the pandemic isn't getting better. It continues to challenge us, even the countries with the vaccinations. So people are under stress in a way that they've never been before, collectively, with an acute pandemic that's now become chronic. So it may be a training program in health. It may be a training program in how to build cities. It may be a training program in developing how to get plastics out of the oceans. If you're, as an organization, have developed content, bring it to the GRC. So just imagine an Indra's net of pods of first responders working with organizations around the world in areas of regeneration, getting trained. We're calling it a backpack, so that all the pod members get trained. Particularly the young people, again, they need to be given the skill sets and the toolkits for how they become regeneration first responders. And we use the image of Indra's net. For those of you who don't know Indra, she was one of the ancient goddesses of the Hindu pantheon in India, one of the primordial goddesses. And Indra had a net. And that net comprised the entire universe. Everything is connected together in a living, conscious intelligence. And the goddess Indra presided over her net called Indra's net that united all sentient conscious life together in a conscious, global, cosmic whole. So just imagine we have an extinction event coming within the context of rising ecological turbulence. It's coming. It's now inevitable. That's what Code Red means. The only option left for humanity is to regenerate and to build a global network of regeneration all over the world, where generations coming together, empowering our young people, form pods of regeneration, working with organizations all over the world, providing opportunities and training. And the training is both in terms of the outer regeneration. How do you actually clean up the river? How do you deal with one of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goal areas? Practically, programmatically, technically. But also, how do you develop inner regeneration? How do you build your capacity for emotional maturity, for resilience, for out-of-the-box thinking, for leadership, for cross-boundary team building, so that you're prepared not only in how you go to the front lines, like an ambulance driver, into a crisis, because the world is in crisis, but how do you do it as a rainbow warrior? How do you do it with the kind of equanimity of presence that you can be in any situation and you can keep your center? You can keep your calm. You can keep your emotional resilience and lead and create in the midst of rising chaos. That's the kind of training that we want to provide for our pods of regeneration first responders. And then as we do that, and as we build this global network, the image that we're wanting to embed now in the global regeneration core is that of a beehive. Regeneration can only happen truly if it's aligned with nature. So we're working with an organization called 7 Vortex. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be embedded into the GRC website, a hive, a hexagon. Because you know all the cells of a hive are in a hexagon. And the pods come into this hexagon. And there's all kinds of these hexagons out there. Every organization that joins the GRC can link into the hive. So just imagine, in the face of Code Red, organizations and individuals and groups all over the world going into a beehive formation. That's the coolest thing I can imagine for how you go into Code Red, is create a beehive. That is the island of coherence in the rising sea of chaos. And that's pure Prigogine. Ilya Prigogine, as you know, back in the late 1990s, for which he got the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. He looked at chaos. He was one of the originators of chaos theory. Most of us think chaos is when everything falls apart, and that's true. But deeper than the discontinuity that you see in chaos is an underlying order that even governs chaos. And if you understand the underlying order, he said, you can create islands of coherence in a rising sea of chaos. And if the coherence gets sufficiently coherent, it can enable the chaos to shift state and come out of chaos to a higher level of coherence. That is the challenge of humanity in the face of Code Red. And we are going to do it as a beehive, which is one of the most coherent ecosystems in nature. And that brings me to another point that I would like to share, which I think is important for us all to hold. What is at the center of a beehive? A queen bee. You may remember that actually was on the first day, the first session of Humanity Rising back in May 22nd, 2020. I said that I'd gone through a thought experiment as the pandemic was deepening, and I thought, what could we do to move through this, to transform the world positively with the same commensurate power as COVID-19, this little virus, is transforming our world into lockdown, social distancing, and death. And I thought for a while, and I thought, well, maybe if you stop fossil fuels. And I thought, well, that stops a part of the problem, but not other parts of the problem. Then I thought, well, what about stopping the deforestation of the Amazon? I thought, no, that won't do it either. Then it occurred to me, if I was dictator for a day, and I had one decision I could make, what would it be? And I thought, you know what it would be? I would order, if I could, every organization in the world, starting with governments, to immediately turn over leadership to women till 2030. Just think about that for a second. We've had 5, 6, 7,000 years of patriarchy. And we men have made a complete hash of it. We've now brought history to the brink. Wouldn't it be a wise idea to kind of rethink that model? And take the two areas that we've suppressed the most and empower them at this moment? One is women. And the second is nature. And that's why we want to turn into a beehive and engage in biomimicry and regenerate in alignment with natural systems and empower the young people, empower women in leadership. Just imagine if over the next several months and several years, women and young people were empowered to be at the forefront of the regeneration of our planetary ecology. And we set forth a goal. We're going to do this with every ounce of our strength till 2030. And then we'll take stock. Just imagine how the world would fundamentally change like that. You don't have to pass any laws. You just got to listen to nature and let the women lead. So when we're talking about the Global Regeneration Corps, and we're talking about what it means existentially to face Code Red, the reality that we have now lost control of nature, and that nature now is striking back and is about ready to take us out. Isn't this the time to fall on our knees and say, Mother Nature, we're your children. Lead us to where we need to go. So that biomimicry becomes our new Bible, our new Torah, our new Quran, our new Bhagavad Gita. Not books, but nature. Living, governing within the context of nature and empowering that group of human beings most suppressed with nature by patriarchy to rise to the fore. So these are all the kinds of issues, my friends, that are coming into active interactivity in this moment. And one of the things that we're focusing on, and with this, I'll bring this to a close, is the Conference of Parties coming up November 1 through 12. We're going into the most important COP in history. It's COP 26. The last 26 years, largely under the impulse of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and climate scientists around the world that have been calling attention to this matter, starting in the 1960s. The first real public announcement was in the early 1980s about climate change. And finally, 26 years ago, in the late 90s, the government started to say, well, at least let's talk about it. We're not going to do anything, but we're going to talk about it. They're still talking about it and still not doing very much. But they're going in this November 1 through 12 to talk about it again in Glasgow, Scotland. So what we're going to be convening between now and then is a series of preps for it. We started this last Wednesday with Rupert Reed, who's one of the founders of Extinction Rebellion and one of their spokespeople. He's now working on transformative adaptation, as he calls it, which is just another name for regeneration. He'll be at the COP as a credentialed participant. So what we're going to be developing is a double helix going into the Conference of Parties with reports coming in every day from Glasgow, not only from Rupert. Bill McKibben will be there. Bill McKibben was the one who's credited with writing the first op-ed, now called blogs, on the internet world in 1982 in the Los Angeles Times, saying that climate change is now the major issue that humanity needs to address. He's going to be speaking to us on the 1st of November, and then through the next 12 days. Rupert, Bill McKibben, Vandana Shiva, various people. We hope to get Greta Thunberg and other activists that they're going to be there to report on a daily basis for what's happening at the COP, both inside the COP in terms of the governments and the corporations and the news organizations, and what's happening outside the COP. Because with every COP, there's been a lot of public demonstrations, direct action, and we'll be following that and getting live reports from that. And then as we go through the 12 days, each day we're going to have a meta theme. One of the meta themes is around regenerative agriculture. And then if you would just regenerate the agriculture, you would put sufficient carbon in the ground to significantly have an impact on global warming. We're going to talk about the oceans. We're going to talk about the Amazonia, the rainforest. We're going to talk about cities As you know from Marilyn Hamilton and others with Integral Cities Meshworks, we've had a series of programs on how cities are dealing with it. She reminded me the other day that out of the Kyoto COP about 20 years ago came C40. The governments didn't end up doing very much about climate change, but the cities did. So we're going to have the head of the C40 has been invited to speak to us. So we'll be talking about cities. We'll be talking about bioregions. We'll be talking about the accelerating rate of species extinction. We're going to be talking about citizen action. We're going to be talking about climate colonialism in relationship to climate justice. And one of the people who's going to be co-moderating the 12 days with me is a woman named Osprey Oriole Lake. She's been at most of the COPs, and she knows the COP from the inside out. She's also the founder of the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network, and has been empowering Indigenous women on the front lines of climate justice for many, many years. I can't think of a more potentiated frontline trench than Indigenous women working for climate justice. So we're going to have Indigenous voices throughout those 12 days. And I would like to, I think, end my remarks on that note. You know, we in the civilized world that is now destroying us, living in the capitalist economies that are now destroying us, living in our hyper-literate internet world with now G5, that's also killing us. We will not successfully regenerate the world. We will not be able to empower women or young people. We won't be able to create an Indra's net of regeneration first responders unless simultaneously we remember the indigenous mind, out of which humanity came. So I'd like to close my remarks today by remembering our beginnings in the womb of the Great Mother. That's where humanity began, in the womb of the mother, in the womb of nature, in the womb of Indra, the Black Madonna, Mother Mary. And out of that, the first spiritual impulse was that of the shaman. Who was the shaman? Who is the shaman? The shaman is that person in society that understands both the language of the society and the language of nature, and serves as a bridge between nature and culture in a way that allows culture to live with nature harmoniously. And that's the precious, precious gift of our indigenous societies in the world today. They're the societies that have somehow survived the onslaught of colonialism and capitalism and technology and modernity, and still kept their connection with the mother, with Pachamama. They need to be our teachers now. And just last week, in fact, we had a 5-day full program on the way of the shaman with the Kiro people. Extraordinary group of people who were there 500 years ago, 1526, when Pizarro and the Spanish conquistadors came in and conquered the Incas in Peru. And the Quiros witnessed what happened, and they escaped back up into the high altitudes of the Andes Mountains. And for 500 years, they stayed sequestered beyond colonialism and all the vicissitudes of the Spanish Empire and the wars and the diseases and the carnage that happened after the Europeans came to the Western Hemisphere. The first 100 years of colonialism, 90% of all the indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere had been wiped out by war and largely by disease. The Kiro survived. So did the Koji up in Colombia and certain tribes in Mexico. Not many kept pure their lineage. And now the Kiro, starting about 10, 15 years ago, along with the Koji up in Colombia, their shamans came down from the mountain saying, we have to warn you that the end is nigh unless you change your ways. And that the bottom line is you've got to return to the mother. You've got to return to Pachamama. So it's in the spirit of the indigenous mind. It's in the spirit of a great remembering of the shamanic origins out of which everything that it means to be human has emerged. At this moment, we need to return to those origins. And in returning to those origins, we will return to nature. We will respond appropriately to Code Red. We will empower our women and our children into leadership. And we will not only be able to navigate through the crisis that is now unavoidably upon us, but we will be able, because we'll be regenerating every step of the way, be able to usher in a new world that is more abundant and healthy because it's aligned with natural systems. And thereby be remembered as that group of people in the spirit of civic action in an egalitarian, inclusive unity that created the kinds of beginnings of a new civilization that our children under the 7th generation, looking back upon this hour, will say that was when the world was born anew. That's when we returned to the mother, and for the first time in thousands of years, rediscovered who we most essentially are. Children of Pachamama. So those are my brief remarks, spontaneously, as it were, given the exigencies of this particular Humanity Rising session. I think, just looking at the chats here for a moment, I think I'll leave it there for today. I think sometimes it's good to just take something in and reflect deeply on these matters. But I want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart, particularly Stanley, Shannon, Kurt, Leslie, those of you who were so attentive and so active for so many months in cultivating the After Chat group and the community that is so faithfully day by day supported Humanity Rising. I want to thank the Sign Network, Rick Buckley, my God, Rick, every day ensures that we're all synced up to our live streaming partners, handles our sessions with technical brilliance. So Rick, I want to thank you. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank our partners. It takes a village. It takes a village for anything of significance to be born and matured and brought into its fruition. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for that. And then next week, we're going to dive into other sessions over the next couple of weeks, but we're really moving into preparation for the Conference of Parties, November 1 through 12. And again, I want to welcome everybody to go onto our website, globalregenerationcore.com, along the lines that I've described. And so we'll see you again on Monday, same time, same station, for the next day 335 of Humanity Rising. Bye for now.